What is going on, you guys? Welcome back to another Swift video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about a split view controller, what it is, how to use it, how to set it up, all that good stuff. So we've got an iPad and an iPhone today. So let's start with the iPad here. So what we're going to be looking at is basically creating this layout, which is pretty common on iPad apps, especially on landscape, where you can have either 2 columns or 3 columns. And based on one interaction in one of these columns, something changes in the other side here. So Apple uses this pretty much all over the place on iPad. So the Mail app, Notes, Stocks, all that good stuff. So we'll take a look at that. And on the iPhone here, you'll notice it also runs, but the split view controller handles this slide out of the other controller on the left. And we can again tap something and the right side changes. And this is even more interesting on the iPad because you actually get a slide out menu, quote unquote, for free with this implementation. You can actually even swipe to pull it out like that. And let me get rid of my antivirus pop-up. But basically, we'll get into the weeds of this. So make sure you destroy that like button as always. Hit subscribe if you haven't done so already and are a returning viewer. Hitting that subscribe button really helps out the channel, as you can imagine. Love making content for you guys, so let's grow together. Get Xcode ready, get excited, let's jump right in. Quick pause before we get into the video. If you haven't seen it already, I am hard at work putting together iOSacademy.io, a community where all of us iOS engineers can come together, learn how to build some of the top apps like Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, in addition to interview prep to land some of these iOS roles at top tech companies. So if you're interested in the free and premium content to come, head on over to iOSacademy.io and enter your email address in the waitlist form, and you will be notified as content becomes available. That said, let's get into the video. All right, so we're going to get started by opening up Xcode and creating a new project. We'll stick with this app here, and let me go ahead and call this project Split View Controller Example. Make sure your language is Swift, make sure your lifecycle is UIKit, and your interface is Storyboard. Go ahead and hit Continue. I'll go ahead and save this to my desktop, and let's dive right in. So as always, we're going to pick a simulator to get started on, and instead of an iPhone simulator, because the split view controller is a little more interesting on an iPad, go ahead and select one of the iPads from the list. I'll go with the Pro 4th generation and hit that run button to get that booted up. And while that's booting up, let's go into the view controller Swift file. And here is our iPad. And let me actually rotate this. So to rotate the simulator, hold Command and hit left or right on your keyboard's arrow pad. And let me expand this Xcode window and let's talk about split view controllers. So as you already know, split view controllers are pretty nice ways to allow for better navigation on larger devices. So things like the settings app on an iPad, or even in horizontal, rather in landscape mode on a larger iPhone like the iPhone 11 Pros, a lot of even Apple's first-party apps use this design where there's 2 controllers to navigate, usually 2 columns or 3 columns. So we're going to take a look at how to put that together and how to control each of the columns. So first, to get started, let me just create a simple button here. And this button is going to present our split view controller. You can set the split view controller as the primary controller of your app, but we're going to go ahead and present it for simplicity's sake in this video. So let me go ahead and set a title. We'll say it's present. Let me also give this guy a frame. And we'll say 300 by 70. And let me also set a title color. Set title color. If I can spell it correctly, there we go. Set title color, we're gonna go with white, normal. And finally, let me center this button by saying button.center is view.center. So fairly simple. We're just putting a button there. There we are. So when we tap this, we want to present a split view controller. So let's go ahead and add a target to this button, which gets called when we tap on the button. So did tap button here, and the event is going to be touch up inside. And finally, we can actually start writing code for our split view controller. So cool. How do you create a split view controller? Well, it's pretty trivial actually. So we're going to say split VC is a UI split view controller, and we're going to initialize it with a style. So the two styles which are most common is double column and triple column respectively. We're going to use double column in this video. It basically shows either two controllers or three as the name implies, but you'll get the picture with double column. So the next thing we want to do is, of course, present the split VC with an animation. And the split view controller, because we've said it's a double column style, we need to provide it two view controllers. So the way we do that is by saying split VC dot view controllers, and we can actually just assign this as an array. You can alternatively say set view controller, and you can pass in the controller and set it for primary or secondary, things like that, or a supplementary different types there. So we're going to use the first option here. So we're going to say split VC view controllers, and I'll go ahead and assign it to this empty array for a second. But let's go ahead and just hit Command R to build and run, and let's see what we get when we hit the button. So we present this and we see it's this empty gray container, which makes sense because we don't provide any view controllers yet. So let me go ahead and provide some view controllers. So instead of doing some random controller, let's make this a more practical example. I'm going to come down here and create a menu controller, and this is going to be a UI table view controller. And if we create this, either it'll give you an error to stub out what we need for the view controller, but I'm just gonna quickly implement it. So number of rows we want in our table, we'll say is 20. We're gonna want cell for row. Let's go ahead and dequeue a cell from our table. You might be wondering why we're doing a table view controller. You'll see in just a moment. But basically, a table view controller is really ideal for the primary controller in your split view. It allows the user to more easily navigate through your app. So that'll be return cell. We're going to give this an accessory type of a disclosure indicator. And of course, we want to register a cell. So let's go ahead and override init with style, call super, and we're going to say table view register, and we're going to want to register a basic UI table view cell for the ID cell. This error is complaining that we want the required initializer, so hit that and fix, and you should be good to go. I don't think we need to assign the delegate and the data source explicitly, but let's go ahead and do it anyways. And let's go and create this. So a view controller on the split view controller should always be nested in a navigation controller. So let me go ahead and create a UI navigation controller, and the root controller will be our menu controller, and we're going to create it with a style of plain, just like that. And let's go ahead and hit Command R. Let's see what happens. So let's hit this, and we see the app actually crashes. So I'm not going to make you guys read through this. So basically, the reason it's crashing is we've told the split view controller that it should be double column, but we only provided one controller. So it's basically yelling at you to provide the other controller. So for simplicity's sake, now that we have one nice menu controller, let me go ahead and create a random VC. So we'll say second VC is a standard UI view controller. Let me give it a background color of, whether it's view, a background color of system blue. And let's go and pass this in to our array here, again, nesting it into a UI navigation controller. The reason you need a UI navigation controller before somebody asks is because we're gonna be pushing and popping controllers, and this is how you get the nice bar on top of the controller. So we can actually give each of these a title. I'll give this a title of menu, and let me give this guy a title of home. And let's go ahead and hit Command R and let's see what happens. All right, so we're in business. So on the left here, we see that we have one view controller, which is our table view controller with all our options here. And on the right here, we have this blue controller with the title of home. So if you really think about it, all this really is a way to nest multiple controllers side by side. And you notice if we rotate it, the left uh, menu kind of collapses. And you can actually open it up with this button right up here. So the takeaway here is this is a much better use of screen real estate on a larger device, that being an iPad or a larger iPhone in landscape. So now that we know how to create this, how do we actually change what's going on the right controller here based on our selection here? So quite simple. What we're going to do is we're going to actually hook it up to the menu here so we can, make it a more real world example. So whenever we tap one of these elements in the table view, we call the did select row function here. So firstly, we're going to unselect or deselect that given row with an animation. And then we're going to convey back to the other controller that has this split view controller on it that we need to go ahead and actually push or show a different secondary controller. And again, that secondary controller would go here on the blue controller. So let's see what we want to do. The first thing we want to do is let me go ahead and make our split view controller a global up here. And we're going to be leveraging a delegate, and we're going to create our own custom delegate here to relay that event that one of the rows were tapped. So we're going to create a protocol here, and it's going to be a menu controller delegate, and it's going to inherit any object, so it can be weak. We're going to add a weak var on here of type our protocol, optional, so it doesn't always have to be initialized. And we're simply going to have one function in here, and that function is going to be did tap menu item at index, we'll say int, and we'll go ahead and say title is string optional, just like that. And whenever we tap on one of these rows, we'll simply say delegate did tap. The index is index path.row, and the title will be title. Let me actually say cell label instead of title. And the way we get this is pretty simple. We say this is table view, cell for row at index path, title label, rather text label, dot text. And notice that we've got question marks here, so this is optional, which is why we made the string of this parameter type optional in case it is nil, which it won't be in our case. We definitely don't want to crash. So now what we can do here is when we create this menu controller, we can assign its delegates. So let me say this is menu VC, and we're going to say this is menu VC. We'll say menu VC's delegate is self. So now this class needs to conform to this new protocol that we created. So I'll go ahead and do that in an extension. So we're going to extend the view controller to conform to the menu view controller delegate. It's going to start giving us an error because we need to bring in that function. So let's go ahead and do that. And now in here, we can go ahead and push a new controller based on what we tap here on the blue controller. So we first need to get the secondary controller. So how do we go ahead and do that? So we're going to go ahead and say split VC dot view controllers dot last as and we're going to cast it to a UI navigation controller, and then we're going to push a new view controller animated true. So what we're basically saying is the last controller in the view controllers in the split view, i.e. the second controller, since there's only 2 columns in our design, we're trying to cast it to a navigation controller. And if we're able to do that, we're saying, okay, push a new view controller called VC with an animation. Of course, we need to go ahead and create this. So I'm going to say VC is a UI view controller. We're going to say the view's background color is going to be system red. We're going to say vc.title will be the title that gets passed in as a parameter here. And let's see if we can go ahead and just get this working, and then we can talk about some other semantics. So go ahead and hit Command R. So we hit this, and by default, we only have this blue controller here. So if I hit this, you see that this red one gets pushed, then another one gets pushed, then another one gets pushed. So we see there's a problem here already. So every time I hit this, we're pushing another controller onto the stack. So quite reasonably, you might run out of memory and your app might crash. So one approach that you might want to do is whenever you tap on one of these, pop the controller back and then push a new one. Or if you already have this red controller, just refresh it with our new option. The other cool thing is now we can actually hit this back button and it'll eventually get us back to that blue screen we were on. I'm not sure how many times I actually went ahead and hit that menu options. So let's keep hitting this until we get back to the start. So option 2, option 1, and there we are at home. So that's how you can control this. And of course, in vertical portrait orientation, it just slides out as a menu like that. You can't actually swipe. You do have to hit this button. Actually, I think I just lied to you guys. You can actually swipe. That is interesting. I was not aware. So you can actually swipe and pull this out. So you kind of get a side swipe menu for free, but essentially this works the same. When you tap it, you can push a controller. If you're wondering how you would push from the root, what you would want to do is first pop to the root controller. So here you would say navigation controller, and you would say pop to root view controller, animated is true. And if you run that again, let's turn to landscape here. And if we hit this, we see that. If we hit this, we pop back, then pop there. So we always stay one level down, right? So if you hit this, you can come back to the blue screen, so on and so forth. And I don't think you can swipe this side though. This side I'm correct on. So you actually have to hit the button to go back one level. A cleaner way you might want to do this is pass in false for the animation here. Reason being is you really might not want to pop back, but now it just looks strange. So you can play around with the animations. And the last thing I'll mention before wrapping up this video is the split view controller does have a delegate of its own. And we can assign that to self here. And let me go ahead and conform to it, and we'll tap into it and see what it offers. So a split view controller delegate gives you a lot of functionality and flexibility to customize what happens on different taps. And you can see it's pretty lengthy here. So just reading through this pretty quickly, the interesting ones to call out is will change to, right? So you can do some action before a controller changes. The other one that's interesting is this one here. So split view controller show. You can basically override how the handling of a show view controller call is handled by the split view controller. There is, of course, a default implementation, but you can change everything about it. Same deal for show detail controller, so on and so forth. So primary view controller here also returns to you the, as the name implies, primary view controller on the split view. So once again, really good for navigation for iPad apps. Let's see, Apple uses it for the Mail app, settings, notes, the Stocks app, if I'm not mistaken. And nowadays with Mac Catalyst and porting iPad apps to the Mac, this is a great layout for bringing your iOS iPad app to the Mac. So definitely dive deeper into it. Awesome to use. Users love it. Everyone loves it. That said, if you haven't destroyed the like button already, make sure to do so for the YouTube algorithm. Helps out the videos and channel quite a bit. keeps me motivated to make videos for all of you guys to watch. Comment any questions, suggestions, feedback down below. I love hearing from you guys. I read every single comment. Hit subscribe if you haven't done so already. If you enjoy the content and want to keep up with it, thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next video.